Good morning. This is George, Dr. George, and this is Citizens Gone Wild. I'm going to talk about something that you never heard of 5 minutes ago, and all of a sudden it's all over the place. It's called critical race theory. What happened was there was a race for the governorship in Virginia, and a guy named Glenn Youngkin versus Terry McAuliffe. Now, Terry McAuliffe is a known quantity. He has been involved in national politics for decades. He was one of the main advisors to the Clintons. He's well known. Plus, he had already been elected as governor of Virginia, so he seemed like a natural. And yet, he lost. The reason he lost, people disagree, but one of the issues that came up that had never been heard of before in a national election is CRT, critical race theory. And a lot of people said, huh? The hell is that? Well, Glenn said that he would outlaw it, and Terry said it didn't exist. And Glenn went on to win the election. So people thought this critical race theory was important in elections to come. And it might well be. Here, I'm going to define it for you, and you'll be one of the few people in North America to know what the hell it is. Basically, it's the idea that the United States is and has been and will be a racist nation. That racism permeates our society. Racism is the beating heart of America, not freedom, not liberty, not democracy, not individualism, nothing. Racism is the beating heart in America. Here's another way to look at it. And here we go. You gotta stop that for a second. I grabbed the wrong thing.
Yeah, I got you.
God darn it. No wonder I need to. Hold on a second. Stop.
Okay.
Stop. Go back there. So I don't look like more of an idiot than I would like to be. Hold on.
Luckily, we can always cut anything you want.
Oh, all right. Okay, we'll start again. Erase all the nonsense so people don't think I don't know what I'm doing.
Okay, yeah, we'll start over. Yeah.
Critical race theory is all over the place, and you will be some of the few people in the nation who knows what the hell it is. Critical race theory is the idea that racism is not an aberration in America, not something that we can cut out like you had cut out during your operation, but it is the normalized feature of American society. That it normalized means that it's ordinary, it's everywhere. Racism in the United States is permanent. It's everywhere. Where's everywhere? Well, criminal justice system, education system, labor market, housing market, and healthcare system are all laced with racism, embedded in laws, embedded in regulations, embedded in rules, embedded in procedures. And this leads to differential outcomes with blacks not doing as well as whites. Some people, often called sociologists, actually say that you can have racism can exist without racist. So the people who believe that we have who are believers in critical race theories as a way to analyze American society, believe it is everywhere, all the time, and always has been. And again, it's the idea that racism permeates our society. Now, when people realize the power of critical race theory, a lot of people believe it caused McAuliffe to lose and Youngkin to win. they raced to do something. And what they raced to do is they voted to ban it from their schools. Even though most people weren't sure what it was no good, and they banned it. And you have about over a dozen school states that have banned critical race theory. I'm here to tell you it's too late. The horse has left the barn and it's happily munching hay in your neighbor's yard. Critical race theory is here to stay. And the reason is that critical race theory is a dominant theory in the area that creates our worldview, that is, our colleges and universities. These are the factories of ideas in our time. The worldview of our times is created to an enormous degree by our universities. It used to be created by groups like churches, no more. Nowadays, the university is the source of ideas, the source of the worldview. It's here from the minute you come to college. When you come to college now, there's usually an orientation period. It used to be one day where they pointed out the library and the gym and told you to pick out a major and sit down. But nowadays it goes on for 3 days. And a lot of the 3 days is taken up with telling you about this country. What is this country? Well, it's certainly not a good country, and it reeks with racism. And you go hear different people talk, you go through different exercises, and people don't even realize what's happening. I remember asking this young lady, did they say anything about race? And said, well, no, not that much. And I said, well, what kind of exercise did you do? And she told me what was happening. I said, in all of these exercises, who turned out to be the good guys and who turned out to be the bad guys? And the bad guys are always white people. This orientation sets the pace. And it often comes in through the cracks in the door that you can't even see. For example, what is the civilization created by white people? Western civilization. Now, it used to be when you went to school, you had to take 2 semesters of Western civilization. That is no longer the case. You might be required to take 1, maybe not any, but you certainly will be required to learn about another civilization, Chinese or Malaysian or whatever. And this is the freshmen who are going to school don't even know what's going on, because this is the first time they've been to college, naturally. And they think, well, this is what it is, and that's that. They don't even know that something is missing, that something is being attacked. While Western civilization may not be mandatory, there are mandatory diversity courses. Sometimes it's mandatory that you learn about a different civilization or a different country. And sometimes there are more focused diversity courses where people attempt to convince you of the truth of the idea that we are a racist country. It goes on in 1,000 different ways. And there's a guide here that I have. Amazing. Here it is. This is 7 pages of University of South Carolina inclusive language guide. What is in this 7 pages? Well, these are recommendations of how you should use words. And you may have thought, well, if I'm in college, I must already know. No, you don't. Okay, so it's divided into columns: identity, explanation, examples. Identity, African American / Black. Black and African American are not always interchangeable. Watch your step, booby. Some individuals prefer the term Black because they do not identify as African and or as American. Also, some individuals may identify as African, Afro-Caribbean, Afro-Latino, or other. It may refer to a group in general. Use Black. If you use the word Black, use it lowercase. Boy, things are gonna get complicated. Here's another one. Undeserved, underserved and underrepresented. Do not use the word minority. Christian, pay attention. Do not use the word minority to describe people from diverse backgrounds. I'm not sure why. When referring to multiple groups of students from diverse backgrounds, use underserved and underrepresented students. Now, if you read the New York Times, you might already know this because all of a sudden these terms came up: underserved, underrepresented. However, use a specific group title when possible. For example, say LGBTQ plus. The plus, I believe, means any other groups that might come along or be discovered in the near future. You can use students, Black students. Oh, you should not use undocumented. Yes, you should use undocumented students. Boy, it's a good thing there's not a test on this stuff. And the plus is, well, anyway, I think I'll stay out of here. Here's immigration status. These people basically believe that we shouldn't think of ourselves as citizens of the United States so much as we should think of ourselves as citizens of the world. And by the way, if you look up the union, there are two major unions in America for teachers, AFT and NEA. Anyway, if you look up a National Education Association, which is a teachers union, you will see that they have different brochures, pamphlets, books. And one of the pamphlets that I saw said how to be a global citizen. The idea is that if you're just proud of America, you're just happy as a bug in a rug that you were born in America, wrong. You should be interested in being a citizen of the world. Now, some of you people are going to go wrong, but not if you hear me out. Do not use the word illegal immigrant. No one is illegal. Do not use the word illegal immigrant or illegal alien to refer to individuals who are not U.S. citizens, permanent residents, who do not hold visas to reside in the United States, who have not applied for official residency, which to most people would say, well, then they're here illegally. No. These words dehumanize the individual by stripping their identity down to a legal status. Instead of saying illegal immigrant or illegal alien, use undocumented. See, they're not here illegally, they just lack a few pieces of paper. Here's another one. By the way, most of you have been relegated to the category of cisgender. Now, you may have seen this word, it's CIS and then gender. What is cisgender? And why are you one of them? A gender description for when someone's sex assigned at birth and gender identity corresponds to the socially constructed and socially expected way. Their idea is that most of what we see and think about in the world is socially constructed. We believe certain things because people have constructed the idea of a male and a female and left it at that for many centuries. But now we can bring up other people. You could be like, here's one, gender non-conforming. I suspected this of you. A gender identity label that indicates a person who identifies outside of the gender binary. The binary is men or women. This could take many, many years to memorize. Also, instead of saying fireman, you say firefighter. Policeman, you say police officer. I was at Rutgers and I said, what did I say? Freshman. They say, you don't say that anymore. You say like first year. Anything that gives preference to a group, men, I guess that's what a freshman is a no-no. These people are out to correct us and to basically make a new world. and you will listen to them whether you like it or not. Half the time you won't even know what's happening. So we have these lists of inclusive language guides. In so many courses, the sins of the white man will be pointed out repeatedly, endlessly, ceaselessly, and you will come out of college different. Whether you know it or not, you will be changed. You may have often been talking to someone, if you're old enough to be talking to another adult, and they said, you know, I sent my son away to college and he came back a different person. Well, yes, all of these negative thoughts about white people, and in particular white men, about Western civilization, about the United States, creep into the consciousness, and eventually, after 4 years, create a different person than first went to college. Also, and this is the key, people who are later on in life, lawyers, doctors, media people, these readers, these newspaper people, these media people, first they went to college and they became a certain type of person. Then they were at TV, at CBS, at NBC, and then they announced the news. They may not even realize that what they're doing is different from what other people did before. They were only given one way and they adapted, either that or they flunked the courses. At the United Nations, that blasts out a politically correct point of view all the time. It is violently hostile to Israel. Israel receives about 1/3 of the criticisms that are meted out there, even though they're a tiny country and actually a pretty darn good country. Nonetheless, when you hear the news from the UN, it will denigrate the United States or mainly Israel. There are also new leaders in various organizations. The old leaders are going away, and the new leaders are pretty much here to stay. And one example is stop that for a second. This is what happens if you prepare too much. And good Lord, hold on a second. You can't knock off the other stuff, including the words knock off the other stuff. There's a new leader in the teachers union, and you'll notice as people are replaced in national organizations, they're replaced further and further to the left. There's a new lady in charge of the teachers union. Her name is Becky Pringle. I don't know if she was named after Pringles directly, but she's the new head of the National Education Association. And she has a particular point of view. Even the headline says, new leader pushes teachers union to take on social justice role. It's getting harder and harder and harder to find an institution that is not politically correct, that is not full of the view that America was a racist country, is a racist country, and by God, there's a lot of work to be done to change that. She believes that there are gross inequities, that means something wrong, that have plagued the nation's educational system for decades. Actually, we've made quite an effort in the public schools to change things. In the state of New Jersey, basically, if you're white and middle class, $18,000 will be spent to educate you. But if you're if you're a minority person and you live in a poor area, we throw on another $10,000. This doesn't appear in the news very much, but you're most welcome to check it out. I can assure you it's the truth. We spend more money on minority folks than we do on whitish folks. And this may not mean much if you live in Bernardsville, which is a very rich community, because they can spend unlimited amounts. But it does mean that the courts are also politically correct. That the courts, whether they use the words or not, are believers in critical race theory. There's so much racism in the school that we have to do something special. And what the court of New Jersey has done, which very few people know about, is this. They have said we must spend as much money as we need to raise up certain minority groups, basically blacks, but somehow browns have gotten in on this as well. Um, and for now on, in the state of New Jersey, and this until this is overturned, um, the Supreme Court in New Jersey has mandated that we will spend about $10,000 more for minority groups than we do for white middle class people. And this can go up, I doubt if it'll go down, but this is where it is right now. The idea is that the poor, they have 28 poor school districts, and those school districts will be given enough money so that they spend enough per person, per student, as the richest districts in the state. Okay, so what is the criteria for giving out money? The bottom and the top must be equal. The middle, no one is very interested in the white middle class, especially, or any of the middle class, but it's mainly meant to take money from the white middle class and give enough of it to the poor so that they have as much money spent on them as the rich. Does this do anything? Does it help anyone? Well, there's a little controversy about that. We have two studies, and naturally, one study says, oh, this has really helped a lot. The other study says, no, it hasn't. It hasn't helped at all. Critical race theory. The idea that we are fundamentally racist in the past, and we still are racist. And the racism may be hard to find. You have to look very, very closely, but it's racism nonetheless. We started out years ago being really, really, really racist, and we had slavery, and the slaves were black, and the slave owners were white. And this went on for a period of time, and then we fought a civil war. About 740,000 men were killed in that war, which is almost as much as twice as much as were killed in the World War II. And we had the aftermath of the Civil War, and then there was a brief period when things were going pretty well in the right direction. Then we fell back, and we had segregation, minstrel shows, and other crap like that. In the 20th century, we finally had the Supreme Court outlaw segregated schools, and we've moved forward since then, to which I think just about everything is integrated. However, we have a problem. African Americans, if they were born in this country, do not do as well as whites. Of course, whites don't do as well as yellows, but we're not so concerned about that, although the Chinese people are, since they score so well that to keep their number down, you have to discriminate against them, which is added to the kind of confusion that we have. So here we are, and now what do? We expected once everyone was equal before the law that everyone will score about the same, but it hasn't turned out to be true. And there's a lot more black poverty than there is white poverty. So what do? Well, we yell at each other, we talk and talk and talk, we produce papers about this, but no one has come up with much of a solution. Critical race theory is a point of view that's designed to explain basically why blacks aren't doing as well as whites are. If you have any answers to this, you should tell the nation because we're puzzled out here. And I think now you're better equipped to at least understand what critical race theory is. It is the theory that this is a racist nation, has always been a racist nation. And unless we take direct action, we'll continue to be a racist nation. I don't believe that, but it's up to you to decide. Thank you.